So, welcome to Jamaica 40 Days for Life team. You are on a mission. A mission for some is a mount, mountainous task. You're going up against contemporary thought and philosophies in regards to women's rights, the right to end pregnancy at whatever stage that she deems. Many arguments, religious arguments, but before we start that discussion, give us that intro to 40 Days for Life. What are you about? What is your mission about? And why are you in Jamaica?
Yeah, that's a great question. And I'll give you the background of 40 Days for Life. It started in Bryan College Station, where Haywood lives and has lived for decades. And we are a pro life ministry and we help Christians end abortion where they live. And the history of our organization is absolutely phenomenal. And what has happened in the United States is Texas is now a pro-life state. They have witnessed the entire journey from having an abortion provider in their local community to now being abortion free. And so 40 Days for Life is a simple campaign. We encourage Christians to pray and fast, to have a peaceful prayer vigil outside an abortion center or hospital, prominent public place for 12 hours a day for a 40-day time period to pray for an end to abortion. And when we do that, then women change their minds. They choose life for their unborn babies. We set the community on fire for life. And that's what we've done here in Jamaica. The third part of our campaign is doing community outreach. And that's taking a positive, upbeat, pro-life message everywhere to the whole community using any means possible. We do media, we do books, magazines, podcasts now. And Haywood's just got a book out called Scalpel and the Soul. We've seen the spiritual change from a culture of death to a culture of life on the local level. And we now have over 650 local cities who do the same campaign, the same prayer vigil, the same pro-life community outreach in many different regions. And the reason we're here in Jamaica is because we've got a first-time campaign and they're praying here outside a medical center that unfortunately is involved. This is a great place to be because they've reached a number of women who are in crisis pregnancies and offer them help, hope, alternatives. So in the history of our organization, we've seen well over 24,000 babies saved from abortion. This is women who are scheduled for an abortion, have chosen life for their unborn child. We've seen now over 150 abortion workers who've had a conversion, left their jobs. We've seen a similar number of abortion centers that have closed their doors for good. And our headquarters in Texas is a former abortion center. So our ministry is all about saving babies. It's about inspiring hearts and minds. It's about transforming communities. It's about building the pro-life movement. It's getting the church on the streets. And it is frontline ministry. And we have witnessed so many graces of local people being heroes for the pro-life movement, making this a prominent issue locally. And that's exactly what we're doing here in Jamaica. We want to set the foundations for a really strong nationwide campaign here that is a real example for the rest of the Caribbean. So that's our ministry. We help Christians end abortion where we live. We help Christians on the local level organize prayer campaigns in public to end abortion and do pro-life outreach too. So I love it. I've been doing this 15 years now, and it's always new, it's always fresh, it's always exciting. There's always great things happening in this world.
Yes, and of course, we're speaking, listeners and viewers, with Mr. Robert Cahoon of 40 Days for Life, and he's accompanied by Dr. Robinson and also his lovely wife, Mrs. Daphne Robinson. So tell us, I don't know who wants to take the question about America's war with abortion. Just a brief synopsis, where they're coming from and where we know that legal battle.
Well, I'd like to first say that I am a former abortionist. So when I discuss this issue, I can say that I know what it's like being in the kingdom of darkness or being inside these killing centers and knowing what it's like to live in the culture of death. not knowing the Lord. Thanks be to God. A little bit over 3 decades ago, Lord Jesus Christ saved me. I became a believer and I moved from darkness to light. I was converted to from darkness to light. I now live for the Lord. Now we talked about the battle for life. I think we need to remind ourselves and remind our audience this whole thing of the taking of innocent life is not new. It has gone on for millennia, since the time when Cain slew his innocent brother Abel, and he was sassing off God, saying, "Am I not my brother's keeper?" And God told him that his brother's blood cries from the ground. From that time, there has been the shedding of innocent blood. And a good biblical example is that when God's own people, Israel, when they would fall away from God and be disobedient, they would choose to worship the foreign gods, Molech, Asherah, etc., which involved horrible sexual immorality, even having immoral sex and worship of these foreign gods inside the temple of the Most High God, where they also sacrifice their own children to these foreign gods and burned them. Now, that was a different method, but God or the devil comes to steal and kill and destroy. So it doesn't matter if he does it by abortion, it doesn't matter where he does it with human trafficking. It doesn't matter if it's a sacrifice to those foreign gods. It is a shedding of innocent blood. But today, what we're really fighting, practically speaking, even though we recognize the underpinning is spiritual. We're not fighting against flesh and blood. However, what we're doing, we recognize certain governments are highly supportive of abortion and say that's part of what they want to call women's rights or reproductive rights. Well, again, we have to believe that God is truly pro choice and he tells us to choose life. Now, the world, just because it says that's a freedom, does not mean it's true, because true liberty and true freedom does not, on the party of one person, does not go along with the taking away of the rights of another party, which is the innocent preborn child. So we're fighting for the justice of those that cannot speak, for the safety, the sanctity of human life, for a baby inside a mother's womb who is just asking for 40 weeks of lease time, the lease space, so that they can become developed and become a part of the world that we now occupy. So we're on behalf of the voiceless, the defenseless, and that beautiful child that we're waiting to be born, that has a right to life, liberty, and the pursuit of happiness.
Mm-hmm. So you mentioned that Texas has, there you have gained ground in Texas, but in terms of the wider legal system in America, what's your assessment of that pro-life
Well,
movement?
from a broad sense, most people are aware that the Supreme Court decision of 1973, Roe versus Wade, was overturned. And thanks be to God that was. When Roe v. Wade was overturned, it just blew up abortion statistics. It made abortion a lot more common in the United States. Now, what happened a couple of years ago, that Roe v. Wade decision was overturned, and it sent the decision back to the states to determine whether it was going to be legal within states. The reality of the situation is, even though we have free and safe states for children, sanctuary states, you might even say, we still have more than half the number of abortions occurring in the United States uh, that were done before Roe v. Wade. But we've got to remind ourselves, God, this is a spiritual battle. God doesn't recognize the boundaries between Texas and Alabama or the United States and Jamaica. So this is a global Holocaust We're fighting specifically right now to join Jamaica, which we were pleasantly surprised to see that the Lord is really setting Jamaica on fire. And if you want to compare it to the United States, it's somewhat chaotic because there's so many different states with different things that they're doing. Some trying to suppress it more, which I believe in, and others who are trying to ensconce it even deeper into their state constitutions, etc.
Yes. Mrs. Robinson, I'm interested in the impact of the dynamism on your relationship with your husband being a pro-abortionist. What was that dynamic like in your marriage during that time, or was that before you were married?
Well, it's before we were married. However, my husband is a servant of the one true living God. Mm-hmm. And as such, he is forgiven, he's repentant, and he's a new man. I did not know that man. This is a man of God.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. Okay, beautiful. But what's your take on the whole pro-life movement? What are your thoughts?
My thoughts on the pro-life movement? I think as sons and daughters of the King, that it's our responsibility to speak for those who cannot speak for themselves, to fight for them that cannot fight for themselves, and to protect those that cannot protect themselves. I believe 100% in the pro-life movement, as I am a part of it myself, even prior to meeting my husband.
Okay, awesome.
To brag, but she is the founding and executive director of a Christian prenatal clinic where she ministers to women without charge to them, and they take care of these women up until 1 year after delivery. So she is very, very much active in boots on the ground pro-life work. She is not just a pro-lifer by inclination, but by conviction and by work.
Yeah. All right. So let's deconstruct the various schools of thought. There's the religious, there's the philosophical, there's the political. Maybe we start with the religious and the philosophical. What are some of the arguments that you would posit to those who say women have a right to do whatever they want with their body, even without touching the Bible? We're just talking about, let's start with philosophy. Let's start there. Philosophy. Yeah.
So the classic pro-life position is that life begins at conception, and this is something that is medically self-evident in the medical textbooks, that at conception a unique and unrepeatable human being is created. And the religious argument is that we are made in the image and likeness of God, but that we have a beating heart after around 16 days. With ultrasound, we can see the beauty and the awe and the gift of humanity in the womb. So technology aids us to really reveal the humanity of the unborn child. And the more we marvel and wonder at how we can demonstrate that life begins in the womb, I think the religious and philosophical arguments is that abortion kills a unique individual human being. And that's why on the philosophical base, we are opposed to abortion in all circumstances, and that abortion leads to physical, mental, psychological, and spiritual consequences, which are very negative. So I believe as a pro-life activist that abortion is something that damages not only the unborn child, but also women as well. It's a taboo subject, and this is why we must be vocal, stand up for this issue, empower people to truth, to encounter truth, and to breathe truth and life into the pro-life movement, and to galvanize churches on this topic.
All right, let's pause there for a few seconds. All right, so we know that the woman has about 24 hours to about 3 days that she's fertile. So sperm reaches egg, there's fertilization or conceptualization, some sort of conceiving that happens. And a woman takes a morning after pill. do you consider that an act of abortion if during that 24-hour to 3-day period that she's fertilized by the sperm and something starts to happen inside of her and the morning after pill destroys that? Do you consider that an act of abortion?
Yes, it is, but the woman is probably not aware of it. It's basically a probability situation. Just as you said, a woman, let's just say, is fertile for 3 days. Let's call it a 30-day cycle, right? That's about what, a 10% probability if we randomize it and she has unprotected sex and gets pregnant or an egg gets fertilized. But there's no pregnancy test that will be able to detect a pregnancy that early. But if indeed she did have sex and there was an egg that came out of that ovary and a sperm that fertilized that egg, and she took the morning after pill and passed that conceptus or that few-celled human being, yes, that baby has been aborted, but there's no way for us to document that or know if that happened for sure. So yes, it's possible, but no way to detect, not with our present technology.
So by extension, then, are you opposed to the entire oral contraceptives or any form of contraceptives industry? Do you believe this is an extension of a pro-abortionist position, the whole medical fraternity in that sense?
Well, now what you're getting into some birth control pills are thought to be what we call abortifacient. In other words, they can sometimes lead to an unknown abortion, but the intent of it by the prescriber, and if you read the product inserts, they don't talk about it as an abortifacient. But from a Christian point of view, the Lord doesn't want us perverting or changing the natural function or performance of our reproductive systems, be it in the man or the woman, because he wants us to be fruitful and multiply. So someone gets away from the actual abortion issue, but the bottom line is abortion is the worst possible thing, of course, that you could do to disobey being fruitful and multiply. But using any means that perverts the true function and the godly design of sexuality and human reproduction is something that's not pleasing to God.
I would add to that, there's a book by Randy Alcorn called Does the Birth Control Pill Cause Abortions? And so there are abortifacient effects of the birth control pill as well as the morning after pill. Condoms can cause preeclampsia in women. And also there are a whole range of medical side effects of the oral contraceptive pill, including changing the curvature of the eye, causing different forms of cancer, bloating, just a lot of medical problems for women. So contraception is a separate issue to abortion. However, they are interlinked because of the abortifacient nature of some contraceptives. So some Christians are not opposed to contraceptives. Other Christians are opposed to contraceptives.
Okay. Are you still with me?
Yeah, still with you. Yeah,
we got you.
Okay. All right. Great. All right. So we're traveling through the different arguments. So drop me in a agnostic society or an atheistic society as well. So they're linked. For example, drop me in Asia, Southeast Asia, maybe in Brunei. I have a friend in Brunei, they have to have underground church. I think it's a Muslim society. Drop me there. What would be your argument from a religious standpoint to argue for life to be preserved?
Yes. Well, the religious argument for the pro-life cause is that children are mankind is made in the image and likeness of God, and that's from 1 Genesis 27, and that we are knit wonderfully in our mother's womb, and that because of that, every child from conception is unique, special, a gift from God, and for that reason, this is we should see children as a blessing from God. They are beautiful and wonderful, and they are the fruit of intercourse. And therefore, children are beautiful because we are all made in God's image, and therefore, abortion is wrong because it ends the life of a child. And this is something throughout Scripture, throughout the Old and New Testament, that is clearly prohibited, from the Ten Commandments to hearing about the slaughter of the innocents, to Moloch, to all across the Bible. It's very clear, even when Jesus leapt in the womb, meeting John the Baptist in the womb, the humanity of the unborn child is undeniable in the Bible. And this is something that all Christians share, is a belief in the sanctity of human life.
Right.
So
just to ditto that. Now, again, you did ask about being in a place that's, I think you said, Brunei, in the Muslim culture, abortion is seriously, that's a serious offense against Allah. Okay. Now in Judeo-Christian, you have a simple commandment, thou shalt not kill. And either one of those constructs, the taking of an innocent life or any life, has penalties. And so and I'm not a student of comparative religion, but I think when you look at whether it be Buddhism, Hinduism, all life is valued. Hinduism, I know, believes in reincarnation and all that, but none of them endorse murder, or that one people group should have the power over the life of another people group. And the preborn child is just another people group. Sometimes we have different people groups that are based on race or religion, but in this case, it's simple age or the level of human development.
Mm-hmm. All right. So in terms of the legal arguments, do those stand by themselves, or do they have to be linked to the religious argument? Can we have a sandbox of just purely legal arguments to win the case for a pro-life person?
In the United States, yes, because the framers' documents, the Declaration of Independence, for instance, says we are endued by certain inalienable rights by our Creator. And just to break it down, that means you are given rights, true rights from God. And it is a responsibility of the government not to grant the right to life, liberty, and the pursuit of happiness, but to recognize that they are rights already given to you by God. So in the United States, that is the case. Now, I know that in the UK, some of our documents are derived from the Magna Carta. Maybe Robert can comment on that.
Yes, so basically abortion has been a criminal act for many years in the United Kingdom. It's the 1861 Offences Against the Human Person Act that still recognises abortion as a criminal act. And in fact, the 1967 Abortion Act only partially decriminalises abortion under certain circumstances. So it's still on the criminal statute at the moment. The abortion lobbyists are trying to decriminalise abortion altogether. Just in France last week, they established abortion as a constitutional right, the very first country in the world. In Ireland, they had a democratic vote which brought in abortion by a vote of the whole country. And so both of those were tragic ways in which abortion was introduced legally. However, in Britain, abortion is still a criminal act, and it's really personhood that defines a lot of the laws in different countries of the status of the unborn, regardless of the legal situation in any country. There is God's law, there's divine law, and then there's the local laws of each country. The more that our laws in our country can reflect God's laws, the more that he can bless our country.
Now, there is one other area that I would call a gray zone that is neither spiritual and in the Judeo-Christian or Islamic realm, or and it's not political, say like in the frame like the Constitution or the Declaration of Independence. And I'm talking about modern medicine, Hippocratic medicine, which started approximately 400 years BC in Greece under Hippocrates. And again, if you read the original oath, it was an oath to a Greek god. However, those standards of Hippocratic medicine were actually standards that had stood the test of time since about 400 BC up into our post-modern era. There were four basic tenets to the Hippocratic Oath. And we got to remember, 400 years BC, we had no microscopes, we had no ultrasound, and no scientific equipment that could prove what we show today, and that's fertilization and all of the things we know that really prove the truth about life. Well, what they said were basically four tenets. And again, this is not law. This was a standard. And it said, number one, we would not do abortions. Number two, no euthanasia. Number three, no sexual relations with our patients. And number four, patient confidentiality. Those key standards, and of course, a fifth one is not part of the Hippocratic Oath, but basically it was a standard that said, first, do no harm. In other words, if there were a procedure that you were going to do, if it harmed the patient in any way, that you don't do it. And an abortion clearly kills the child. And so this violates a basic standard that we had. And again, it's not legal, but it's something that doctors held independent of what their religious beliefs are or what the Constitution says or Declaration of Independence, because medicine was kind of a ministry within itself. And we deviated from that. And what we've done as physicians, we have violated the public trust at the highest level. And now we're killing 60 million innocent preborn children on this planet yearly, violating an oath that we held so dear that started 2,400 years ago.
Yes, I would give a name for that gray zone. I'd call that ethics. So ethically, there's a breach. Medically, philosophically, there's a breach. Religious-wise, there's a breach. Talk to us, Daphne, as a woman. So if all fails, all the arguments fail, religion, philosophy, ethics fail, talk to us, woman to woman. How would you speak to a woman about her decision? I asked my question, prefacing on a background. I have a friend who is a very effective preacher. He travels the world. He establishes over 50 churches globally. And one of the churches is in Haiti. As you know, Haiti is in crisis. His ministry is very effective. He is a product of a rape. His mother, I believe, contended with the idea of aborting him. And he's alive today and is a global influence, established of church. How would you talk to a woman about her decision to abort a child from a woman's perspective, you know?
Well, an abortion is a decision that cannot be reversed. And it's something that is worthy of very serious consideration. And a woman needs to have information to make that decision, equipped to make an informed decision, which means all of the medical evidence, as well as the evidence that we find in the Bible as believers. There's, the mantra that it's my body, my choice, but it's not her body. It's two bodies. The baby is a separate individual, human being, separate DNA. That baby has not consented to being aborted. It was not the baby's choice. And it's not a simple decision either. One might think that having an abortion will simply make their situation better or their problem go away. But all of the situations and conditions that existed prior to the abortion will still be there after the fact, except she now has the trauma that she has taken the life of her unborn child. There's possible psychological, emotional, and spiritual ramifications that need to be considered. It's not a simple decision. It's something that one must really think through. And I would never encourage a woman to have an abortion. There's too many other options in that reproductive choice aside from abortion that are life affirming that she can deal with much more better at a later period of time. Many women who have experienced an abortion have an increased risk of suicidal ideation, attempted suicide, and actual suicide. You also have the risk of increased drug and alcohol use. So there's any number of complications that can come as a result of that abortion that a woman isn't really thinking about when she's in the middle of her crisis.
And it's the regret. You'll always run into women that say, boy, I'm sure blessed and thankful I did not abort my baby. And that goes for those that are conceived and rape or whatever. But you just run into so many women who deeply regret that they that they don't have their child. And probably one of the groups of women that we don't talk about much, about 15% of the women that abort their first child are not able to get pregnant again. That group of women are extremely remorseful and regret their abortion because they realize the only child that they may have had, they aborted. And that's a large number of women. But the women's rights people, they don't want to talk about women like that. The large number of damaged women who are so regretful have been damaged emotionally and some physically due to that decision they made, which oftentimes was made in haste and pressured. We've got a lot of women who have been bullied by either parents or boyfriends or pimps or whatever to abort their children. A woman is not naturally prone to kill their child. It's not a natural thing. When a woman becomes pregnant, they are created, their body goes into a hormonal change to make them protective, to make them loving, and to make them nurturing. So when you go against those natural functions of the human body, and then that woman decides to kill that child, it sets up so many things that Daphne just talked about. Oh, depression, subsequent promiscuity, a cascade of things that happen because they've gone against the natural functions of their body and the way they were designed.
Yes, very poignant points you're making there. So have you been briefed about the Jamaica situation? What's your assessment of the battle in Jamaica?
So we just had an epic mission trip here the last few days, and it is Dr. Janel from the Love March movement, who's been the brilliant local leader of the 40 Days for Life campaign here. Just to give you a brief perspective on the last couple of days here, we've done a media interview with the national press, with local Christian radios, 5-6 media interviews in total. We've met the Archbishop. We had a meeting for pastors and leaders, pro-life leaders this morning. We honored some of the pro-life leaders, such as a priest who 10 years ago stopped abortion coming into Jamaica when it became a hot potato issue. I've just been in awe of the deep faith and the conservative values here in Jamaica. You still have pro-life laws here. Nevertheless, there's still a lot of pro-life work to be done. We met some nuns who run a house for women in crisis pregnancy today. And there's an opportunity to get a second 40 Days for Life campaign going in Montego Bay, which hopefully that's a new campaign. And we just want to see 40 Days for Life thrive all over the Caribbean, from Trinidad to St. Lucia to all the different islands. And what you're doing here is starting a new precedent for the region. Our campaign is spread virally throughout Latin America, which is just on your doorstep here. And there's no reason. 40 Days is a great campaign because it gets the church on the streets. It's evangelistic by nature. It's simple. It can be conducted anywhere. And we've seen stories of 6 babies saved from abortion here in Jamaica. Praise God, which for a first time campaign is groundbreaking. They've had a response from the medical center here of quite aggressive, and that's been a huge challenge. So most people don't witness that kind of kickback immediately from a campaign. So that's really encouraging. We had a massive prayer vigil today. We did a procession. We had a rally for a couple of hours. And just the level of faith, of preaching from especially the Protestant pastors has been phenomenal. So you've got all the grounds to help the pro-life movement thrive here. And Daniel's got a phenomenal vision for Love March movement to get post-abortion healing, chastity, talking the virtue of purity in schools and universities. Just a lot of facets of the pro-life movement we can really just take up to the next level quite quickly here. So there's tons of good work to be done. Same time, not that many NGOs involved in this field. It's a small country, less than 3 million. So it's a small world here, but there's still loads of good to be done. But I've been really very impressed, really inspired, and very encouraged by the zeal, the passion, the enthusiasm of pastors and of leaders here too.
And of course, your message is much more powerful in the context of global decline in birth rates in some key economies. Japan, some schools, some entire schools are closing down. Jamaica also has, I'm not sure what's happening in the US, but a number of key industries globally. What are your comments on the effect of your message in that context?
My brother, I know there is one Holy Spirit, because that's exactly the point that I wanted to elucidate next. What you see in Jamaica is a fertility rate of about 1.6 or 1.7. For those in the audience that don't know, we should very briefly say that for a population group to be stable, and that is neither declining in number or increasing, you need a fertility rate of about 2.1. Jamaica is below that. So if you continue on the same path, you're going to have continued population decline. Now, Jamaica is not alone in that. If you look throughout the West Indies, be it Barbados, be it Trinidad, all of these West Indian islands, you see population decline. In the United States, Black women experience abortion at twice the rate of their white counterparts. Now we've got to recognize the devil is an equal opportunity destroyer, but I think we have to look at it. We looked at it, things from a religious and from a somewhat political or ethical, but we know it's spiritual, but we have a public health / survival of this country, of certain races, due to abortion and population decline, because the whole nation of having families and marriage is something that the enemy is taking away. And certain societies and countries are going to go away. Japan is a horrible example of that. Western Europe is going through the same thing. Interestingly enough, the continent of Africa is the only healthy place on the planet now where they have positive population growth. So it is no matter of whether the God is going to come and judge us because of abortion or whatever. We may make our own selves extinct simply because we want to embrace this culture of death.
And of course, attached to that, though it's a separate discussion, homosexuality is also a challenge to the fertility rate. So when you juxtapose the two, killing the children and homosexuality, we are headed towards extinction.
People, and let's not say we're speaking out. No, I have plenty of gay friends and people of different lifestyles. I love them just the way the Lord would love them. But if you have, say, 10 women and 10 men in a room, if 2 of the men and 2 of the women decide that they want to be couples, look what's happened. You've decreased the number of people who can have children by a significant amount. But there's another factor that we haven't talked about. When you shrink the gene pool, what happens? the intellectual capacity of the entire population goes down because the health, mental and physical health of a people group is dependent on the gene pool continuing to expand. So unfortunately, one of the public health issues of homosexuality is a decrease in our gene pool, decrease in cerebral performance, among other things. But I've also been in courses now where they've looked at children who have been raised by two women or two men. And what we're finding, since now a lot of these children now are old enough to talk about what their childhood was like, even though they had two wonderful men as parents or two wonderful women, they still had this inside urge for desire for the parent gender that was missing in that family. And that's just because we're designed to have a parent that is male and a parent that is female. That's just design.
And I would just add the relationship between homosexuality and issues to do with abortion. Obviously, a homosexual couple would not have a child naturally, and this leads to other ethical issues such as surrogacy, where another person has a child, you pay for that. That's illegal in Britain. It's not illegal in every country, but that is separating a child from its mother, often with a financial payment. Some people go to third world countries to go and pick up children in that kind of arrangement, and to separate a child from its mother in those kind of circumstances, I find personally abhorrent. And it leads to further commodification of children, these kind of situations and relationships, as well as other situations. So there's a whole Pandora's box of ethical issues that surround, the further consequences and logic of the homosexual culture, particularly in relation to children and upbringing of children related to abortion.
Thank you. Well, as we wrap up this brief discussion, tell us what's next. Each of you can tell me what's next for 40 Days for Life, and what's your message to Jamaica, whatever section of Jamaica that you want to speak to.
Yeah, I'll jump on that. This is a really exciting time for the international development of 40 Days for Life. We just had a massive leaders conference in Rome, 27 nations, 200 leaders. I just went to Ireland on a mission trip there a few weeks ago. We had a brilliant conference. We've got new campaigns starting. Just 2 days ago, Holland, we're getting a prayer vigil outside the largest abortion centre in Holland. We're also going to have a campaign on the Algarve, the south coast of Portugal. So now going to have like 4 campaigns in Portugal. We only had 1 in the past, and we've now got 5 in Hungary. Hungary is really on the rise and the movement up as well. It's possible that Poland will liberalise its abortion laws soon. We could get Poland signing up en masse, and we also have a campaign in Paris, in France, for the very first time too. So we now have 6 people on our international team, including Pamela, who took the campaign from 1 campaign in Bogota in Colombia to now it was 67 vigils. Now it's even more. So we've got a really robust international team, and we are integrating all the projects the US have done into an international context over time. So from a website to fundraising to entities to communication, podcast, magazine. We're great at the mission trips and we're great at the conferences, but now we need all the administrative extras that come with running an NGO. So we're on the way up, and despite secularization of Western Europe, there's still loads of opportunities. A lot of people are putting up their hands now. San Marino will sign up, Slovenia will sign up as new vigils, and so we should see now 100, 200, 300 campaigns outside of the Americas, Latin America and North America too. So that's just a brief. Our message to Jamaica is this is a beautiful country, amazing people, and children are a blessing. And we stand at a crossroads in different cultures and customs. Many people, there are many Jamaicans living abroad, sending money back to Jamaica, and children are a great gift. And retain the pro-life laws that you have, retain your conservative values, and it is always worth promoting Christian values of marriage, of family, and also of sanctity of children. So we've loved being here. We've loved the hospitality. We think this is a great country, and our message is one of hope, it's one of life, it's one of love, and it's one that will lead to the spiritual blessing of Jamaica. So what a great country, amazing place. We hope the pro-life movement flourishes here in the future.
I would ditto that. I would say that I was just so pleasantly surprised. I thought I'd get here and, see a little spark of the pro-life movement. But I would say that you already have churches that are coming together. Pastors are an absolute key. Pastors and parish priests and Christian leaders are the ones that are key to leading other believers to understand how serious a matter this is. And let me tell you, you've got a great core of individuals here. Not only is 40 Days for Life ready to join this already very viable pro-life movement here, you guys have something like a pro-life turbine that's already starting to turn. And 40 Days for Life is just glad to come and be a part of this movement that I remind people that abortion is far more offensive to God than it is to us. So if we get behind the author and the finisher of our faith and the creator of these innocent preborn children and use his power, get behind him, we're going to win this thing. But Jamaica is catching on fire for life, and I'm just glad to be a part of it as 40 Days for Life.
And I'm excited.
Awesome.
Very, very excited for the future because the people are so passionate for life and for the kingdom. And I think you're going to have a very rapid turnaround because the level of engagement and the compassion that they have in their hearts for those that they're serving and the passion they have for this ministry and for the Lord and the kingdom. It's incredible. I'm just in awe, in awe.
Thank you, Mr. Cahoon, Dr. Robinson. Mrs. Robinson, thank you for being with us on the Heart to Heart Talk Show, where we talk about issues of faith, family, finances, fitness, with a sprinkle of fun. And we pray that this message will go out and we will continue to be a rally cry point for families, for the rescuing of families, rescuing of marriages. We have been on a serious war campaign. We have had interviews here on the show that have had echo effect in the national framework of the law in terms of, that whole movement to preserve our sense of identity and to war against that agenda that's out there to corrupt our children. So we continue to have these conversations with thought leaders as yourself, and we pray that the Lord will continue to work in your organization. Thank you for being with us.
Thank you.
Thank you very much.